So, let's break down one of the most intense competitions you'll probably ever see. We're not just going to look at it as some crazy piece of entertainment. Nope. We're going to treat it like a masterclass in pilot resilience. We're going to deconstruct the whole thing. The physical, the mental, and the psychological gauntlet that push these people to their absolute breaking points. We're going to figure out what it really takes to win.
Okay, picture this. It all kicks off with 100 professional pilots, 100 of them, and they are all fighting for one single, completely life-changing prize. The scale is just massive, and right from the get-go, the odds are just insanely stacked against pretty much everyone. And what are they fighting for? This. We're not talking about a trophy or some cash prize. We're talking about a $2.4 million private jet. A price like that, well, it doesn't just raise the stakes, it basically cranks the pressure up to an 11 from the very first second.
So, that brings us to the big question, right? What is the secret sauce? From a pilot instructor's point of view, what are the qualities, the strategies, and the breaking points that actually separate that one winner from the other 99? That's what we're here to find out.
All right, here's our flight plan for this whole analysis. We're going to start with physical resilience, then dive into the mind games of trust. After that, we'll look at the marathon of endurance, see what happens when the body starts to give out, and finally, we'll dissect that wild endgame.
Let's get right into it. Part 1, physical resilience. So after they trim the herd a bit, the pilots who are left face a test that seems really simple. But trust me, it was specifically designed to find and eliminate anyone who couldn't think on their feet under incredible pressure.
And right away, we get our first big lesson. You'd think the biggest, strongest person would have a huge advantage, wouldn't you? Well, nope. One of the first guys to get knocked out was a former NFL player, a man literally described as a brick wall, and that proved it immediately. Brute force was not going to get you through this.
So what did work? Well, it was all about how fast you could adapt. The survivors didn't just stand there and take the 60-mile-per-hour wind. No, they analyzed it. They watched why other people were failing, and then they learned. They turned sideways to make a smaller target, they dropped their center of gravity, and they locked themselves in. It was a perfect display of what you might call physical intelligence.
All right, so we're shifting gears now. We're moving away from the physical and diving deep into the psychological. Welcome to the currency of trust. This whole briefcase challenge had nothing to do with their bodies and everything to do with their integrity and their ability to read people.
You know, the game started out pretty straightforward. Everyone was being honest about what was in their briefcase. But think about that. It gave all the power to the person who was deciding whether or not to steal. And then someone lied. And just like that, with one single lie, trust went out the window and the entire game just flipped on its head.
You hear this quote, right? Pilots got integrity. It perfectly captures what everyone thought going in, that there's this shared professional code, you know? A pilot's word is their bond. But when you're playing for millions of dollars, well, let's just say that assumption was about to get blown to bits.
And this is where the game got really, really smart. One pilot figured out how to use the idea of integrity as a weapon. He gives his whole convincing speech about his character, gets his opponent to believe him and not steal his briefcase, which, of course, was exactly what he wanted. It turned out that performing integrity was way more powerful than actually having it.
Okay, on to Act 3, endurance and the breaking point. We're down to just 10 pilots, and the final challenge is brutally simple. The last person with their hand on the jet wins it. This was no longer a game of skill or wits. This was just a pure, raw marathon of willpower.
And for almost a full day, the difficulty just kept ramping up. It wasn't just standing still. It started there, sure, but 5 hours in, they're forced to march. 8 hours in, they're running at high speed. And get this, by hour 15, they're balancing on one foot with only a single finger on the jet. Each stage was just designed to break them down, piece by piece.
This one statement from a pilot tells you everything you need to know about the mindset you had to have. Strategy? That's gone. This is just a raw, primal refusal to give up, even if it literally means you collapse.
So this brings us to a really critical part of the breakdown. What happens when the body just betrays you? After so many hours of this relentless strain, it stops being a fight against each other. It became a fight against their own bodies.
And you could literally see the signs of failure. For Graham, it was an involuntary hand slip. His body just couldn't hold on anymore. For Bobby, it was a total loss of focus. He became so disoriented, he didn't even know if his hand was on the jet. And for Samuel, well, for Samuel, it was the most dramatic of all, a total system shutdown.
Samuel's own words are just chilling. Listen to how he describes it. That's not just being tired. That is your body's emergency brake getting slammed to the floor. You can't fight it. It's a complete physical override. Game over.
And that brings us to the final act, the final hour's gambit. We're down to just 3 pilots, and you think it's going to be more of the same, right? Nope. They change the rules completely, and the test shifts from endurance to something way more complicated. Suddenly, a 1-hour timer pops up, and here's the new rule. If there's more than one hand on that jet when the clock hits 0, nobody wins. That clock creates this unbelievable pressure cooker, forcing these completely exhausted finalists to actually start negotiating.
And this is where they hit a wall. You've got Jabbar, who is dead set on earning this thing through a test of skill. But the other 2 guys, Saud and Tarek, they have their reasons, and they just want to leave it up to a game of luck. It's a complete philosophical deadlock, and that clock is ticking. So it all boils down to these 2 completely opposite arguments. On one hand, you have the principle of it. I want to walk away knowing I earned this. But on the other hand, you have pure pragmatism. Look, somebody has to take it or we all lose it. They're not just arguing about who gets the jet anymore, but how it should be won.
And that's when you realize what the true test of this final hour actually was. It had nothing to do with stamina anymore. The timer was there for one reason: to see who would be the one to break the deadlock, who would be willing to compromise their principles to stop everyone from losing. Which really just leaves us with this one last thought. After a 22-hour ordeal that tested every single fiber of their physical and mental being, the whole thing came down to a negotiation. It kind of makes you wonder, right? That maybe, in the most extreme tests of survival, the ultimate skill isn't being strong enough to outlast everybody, but being wise enough to know when cooperation is the only way to win.